this project and was so grateful years and years ago when Brian and Kathy asked me to come and sit and be a panel person for it. And at the time, I still don't know how much I have to offer, because I think it's so personal and what people go through when you talk about making an aging plan. It's so different for all of us. And so what I always hope to bring to any conversation like this is just that question of possibility, and the question that we don't know why people are where they are, or why they've made the choices, or why they feel trapped with what's in front of them. And as a support person, I just always want to come in with a spot of not knowing why, and just be open to possibilities and opportunities. So I'm tickled for you guys to come. Brian, you're a retired engineer, I want to say. Yes.
That's pretty right.
Pretty yeah. Right. And Kathy's a retired psychologist.
Yes.
Yes. And I love that this is their mission. So I'll let you guys explain a little more about who you are and what you brought here for us today.
Great. Do we want to go around the introductions first?
Yeah. So my name's Mindi Hogan. I'm the volunteer coordinator. I also do outreach and see some patients as a social worker at Hospice in Missoula. I have 1 quarter left of grad school.
Cool.
And I love my toddlers. I love my grandparents. And feel really lucky to get paid for my mission and love with what I do all day long. So it's me.
I'm Kathy Cross, and I'm attending to my 94-year-old mother who lives in New York. So I do distance caregiving and have been attending these seminars now. I guess I've been to about 5 or 6, and they're just wonderful. Thank you for offering.
I'm glad you come. Thank you.
My name is Ingrid. I'm native German, as I can't hide it. I've been in Missoula for 4 years. I'm a BSW student at the School of Social Work. Maybe that's why.
Excellent. Yeah.
Minor in gerontology and Native American Studies. Recent breast cancer survivor.
Yay.
That's about it.
Hi, I'm Dobie Hunter, and I've just recently moved down here from Folsom. And I began to do some training up in Folsom for No One Dies Alone, which is NODA. So I'm interested in doing that down here.
I'm Brad Owen, on and off in Missoula for the past 5-6 years. I find myself with quite a bit of time on my hands between my job, which is kind of intermittent, and some volunteering or starting to volunteer for hospice, and have an interest in what Hospice of Missoula does with this.
I'm Kelly, and I started coming to these meetings earlier this year, and just because I thought the topic sounded interesting, and the first meeting was engaging enough that I've kept coming back ever since, and I have yet to attend a meeting that I didn't take something home from.
Excellent.
So thanks for having these every month.
Thanks for coming.
Ditto all of that. My name is Amy. I think I've been coming since you've started. I've missed some, but I love Hospice of Missoula. My mother died under their care with my family surrounding her. And I also represent an organization called Compassion and Choices. And we will be active in the legislative session again this year, protecting the Baxter decision. And if you wonder what that is, I can tell you later.
So I'm Nicole Dunn, and I've been a hospice volunteer for about 12 years with Partners Hospice. And I've been coming to these for a little while, and I really appreciate that you guys do these every month. So thank you so much. Thanks for coming. Yeah.
I'm Liz Rant. I'm a local physician.
And I'm Trish McKay, and I just started volunteering with Hospice.
One more little side note, our friend in the back with the camera is from MCAT, and they tape these, and I think that's, again, going back to that idea of how do we get what we talk about here out to the community. It shocks me all the time, the random people that will come and say, I saw your program, and they just go right into where they left off on their thoughts, and I think that speaks to people laying around in bed, flipping through channels, and coming across something that really captures their interest. And we do try to make them topics that aren't things that happen around the kitchen table all the time, but maybe should. So if there's any of you that don't want to have your thoughts or what you're saying shared or yourself, you can just let her know at the end of our night, and she'll do her editing magic to make sure that any of your deepest, darkest secrets aren't revealed to all of Western Montana. Or maybe you want them, I don't know. So let you guys take it away.
Great. So Kathy, introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce myself.
I'm Kathy Derry.
Psychology. She was a counselor, family, and
Yeah.
also
Started
music.
out as a music teacher, a music therapist, and then
State hospital.
counseling, and yeah. So now I'm a community volunteer. I'm very happy to be.
Brian Derry moved here in 2006 because Missoula is a beautiful place, but also because we got 2 grandkids up here. And we also have 2 grandkids down in Monroe, Louisiana, which is where we'll be going next week. Thanks you, Hospice of Missoula and Mindi, for sponsoring these and for asking us to share our story. Kathy and I, for about 3 years now, have sponsored, led workshops called Kitchen Table Conversations about end of life. And we have especially targeted faith groups because there seems to be a natural pool of participants that might be interested in that kind of thing. So what we're going to do this evening is tell you about Kitchen Table Conversations, what we do, and then we're going to be doing a participative activity, a couple of them, giving you a taste of a couple of the things that we do in our workshops. So our workshops are designed to allow. No, I'm just going to. Are designed to make sure that we've got people having conversations with their loved ones about what they want when they no longer can speak for themselves. Now, when you think about that, that could be anyone, anytime, because an unexpected accident occurred tonight on my way home that I have no control over, and I could be in a particular situation where I couldn't speak for myself, and Kathy would have to be making decisions for me. And if she doesn't know what my values are and what my priorities are, she's going to be guessing, and it's going to cause a lot of stress on her, and I perhaps am not going to get my needs met the way I would have preferred to. So we've been doing this about 3 years, and one of the things we talk about is what is a good outcome from a serious crisis situation. Well, first of all, a good outcome is that you're not having a conversation and thinking about it when the crisis occurs. So the conversation needs to take place around a kitchen table with your loved ones while everything's normal, whatever normal is for you right now. And so the good outcome is when the desires of you or the person that you're advocating for are carried out as closely as possible as to what they wanted or what you wanted. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kathy to tell you a little bit more about Kitchen Table Conversations.
Yeah, so more specifically, we gather around small tables, and each table has a facilitator so that we can stay on topic and everybody gets a chance to talk if they want to. Each person is given a workbook, which I thought I had right, I have them right there. You might want to just pass that around. What we do is actually we listen to each other's stories. We all have experiences, but we seldom get to tell our stories around death. That's not a common subject that we talk about. And we find out how people have been affected by those dying experiences. And we respond to how we feel about the choices that medicine offers about our values and on which we base those choices. And we know that medicine has changed. It continues to change. It continues to lengthen life, but not do possibly anything about the suffering that goes along with lengthening life. We talk about our advocates and proxies. Who makes a good one? Do you make a good one? And we talk about what that job is of proxy and what we expect. And all of these are things that we really need to be talking about to those people around us, and probably all the people who might be there at our bedside at some point. Our workshops are two-hour sessions a week apart. And we ask participants to do homework in the week in between, because that gives us an opportunity to process what they have learned the first time and process the questions that we ask. We mostly have questions. We have few answers because it's the participants that have the answers. The homework that we ask people to do actually comes from the Conversation Project, which is an online organization with wonderful resources and lots of really good stories. If you're not familiar with them, I really recommend that you do that. During the second session, we find out what obstacles people see to the conversations. And then we have a panel of healthcare providers that the people in the workshop can ask any question that they want of the physicians. The physicians have all kinds of experience around death. Most of us have a very limited amount of experience around death. And people in our workshops have such varied experience, life experience. We also find that people of different ages are going to have very different questions. If you see yourself as a possible proxy, you're going to have different questions than if you see yourself as being terminally ill and not able to speak for yourself in the near future. We do walk our people through the advanced directives, and we tell them what to do with those directives, how to get them into the state record. We encourage them to share them with their doctors and all of the loved ones who might very well be at our bedside. Now, I took my advanced directive to my doctor and said, here's my 5 wishes, and she said, thank you very much, we'll put it in your chart. There was no conversation. Now, what we have to realize is that she's not very likely to be at my bedside when I'm passing. It's going to be someone else. So maybe the time for us to talk wasn't so necessary. But it is in the record, and it will be there for others to read. More importantly, though, than the advanced directive, we feel, and we understand from experts, people who are on the front line, more importantly than the advanced directive is the conversations that we have with the people that are going to be there. The doctors will more likely listen to what the people are saying in the room. Doctors also might have personal reasons why they don't want to follow advanced directives. When they can't do what they've been trained to do, they could be very reluctant to do something other than what they've been trained for. And the conversation is very important because what I hear some people say is, oh, if I start getting dementia, just pull the plug. Well, what if there's no plug to pull? And very often dementia does not happen all at once. People are lucid very much of the time. Yes, show signs of dementia. So what does that mean? What are you talking about when you say something like that? When you say, I want to live as long as possible, What does that mean when you're on a respirator or a feeding tube and the pacemaker and are going through dialysis? What does that actually mean? What kind of meaningful life would that be for you under those circumstances? So right now, from what I have said, are there any questions that you have for us around kitchen table conversations that you'd like to know right now?
Around the process, or?
Anything.
About either right now.
Well, I was struck when you mentioned doing all of this so that the following events would go the way the patient, the client wanted them, which is a nice thought, but there are a whole lot of other people involved, and they often have needs too. I just wondered if you helped
Other
them
people
address it.
involved helping with that sort of.
Well, for instance, I have 4 sons, and if I were in a terminal kind of situation, they're 4 very different young men, and they have different senses of how long, what we would want to do. One of them would be incredibly uncomfortable with pulling the plug at an hour after the accident kind of thing. The other 3 would say that's what mom would want. So,
Right.
We've got to learn to do those. Yeah.
The conversation now with all of them, hopefully in the same room, would be very
Well,
important.
we've done that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was just
But for-
wondering if that's a factor that you take into account in the conversation.
Yes, it's really critical that the folks who are your loved ones, and let's take the example that you used, which are the 4 sons, to try to get that one son who may be reluctant at least to neutral. In other words, he may not agree with what it is that you want, but he's not going to interfere with what it is that you want. When that's not possible, and that is not an uncommon circumstance, the advance directive says X, which says, I don't want to be intubated.
Yeah.
I don't want to have a feeding tube. And this one family member says, I can't let mom starve.
I'm not thinking about that. I'm talking
Okay.
about the needs of the other people, the sons.
Right.
It isn't enough to say that's the way mom would have wanted to die.
Right.
You
And
have to
I'll
take
say
into the
that
situation.
In my conversation with our sons, that's one of the things that I talked about too, is that one of them is a healthcare provider, so he's kind of the one in charge. But I want him to listen to what it is his brother has to say and help him to be ready for that. May have to take extra time, may have to give more information. And so those are the things, and they can be the sorts of things that can be addressed.
Yeah, it isn't just how I die. I can handle an extra 24 hours on the respirator. If
Right.
It's going to
Right.
help the situation.
Right. I don't want to go to a nursing home, but if I cannot be, if it's going to be a huge burden on my family, that's where they need to have me, where I can get the care that I need. Yes, so it's
Yeah.
that's the thing about things. They're not black and white answers. They're all very gray, which really begs the conversation to a piece of paper.
Mhm. Yeah, well, the pulse does not.
Okay, Amy's over there with a question.
I just would add a comment to that this is a process and an ongoing dialogue, not a conversation. The workshop gets it going, but it must continue because it's a moving target always with your human body and your relationships. So it's a process, not an event, and it's a dialogue, not just one time, piece of paper, fill it out, file, good to go.
Exactly right.
Kathy?
The workshops, as you've described them, 2 sessions a week apart, is this in a group setting or is it for one family?
They're groups. They are groups. For instance, as you
At a
said, we went
church.
through at a church. We went to the Springs. We've been over to nursing students at the university. So they are groups but the tables, there are several tables. Each table has a facilitator.
And the table could be a family.
One family.
Right, and very often we have family members at the same table. We also say, if you want to kind of think this through without the family member at your table, that's a possibility too.
And how do you handle families that don't live in the same town, that live all over the United States?
Let me clarify, Kathy. We are not organizing families at tables to have the conversation. We're trying to equip participants of the workshops to have the skills and knowledge to be able to have the conversation with their family, to recognize what the barriers are that
I see.
there's going to be resistance to have the conversation.
Okay.
Hey, Mom, you're going to live forever. We don't need to talk about this. So that's
it's like a pre-workshop.
Exactly.
for what's
You're
gonna
teaching.
happen.
it's a skills building.
Teaching skills.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Exactly. Okay,
One last thing, how do we get into this, and how much do we get paid and all that? We're volunteers. We charge nothing except for materials that we pay for out of pocket in terms of outside resources. I never had the conversation with my dad. And so I'm there when he decides to quit walking at the age of 99. He could still walk, but he decided that's, it's time to quit walking. So I hadn't had the conversation. I didn't know what he wanted. I thought he had stopped breathing. I called 911, put him through an awful 6-hour process. If I'd had the conversation, I might have known that he would have said, Brian, if I fall, I don't want to be resuscitated if my heart stops.
Yeah.
If it appears I'm not breathing, I really don't want you to intervene. But I hadn't had the conversation. So it was a really lousy feeling that I had when that event occurred. Kathy go ahead.
yeah, I had very much the same experience with my father, and family that did not agree, did not understand what the job was, a proxy, and it was a very difficult time for us. And there's still some issues in the family, and so I don't believe that needed to happen, and I would like to prevent that in my own life and in the lives of others. Hospice of Missoula is sponsoring our workshop in January on Thursdays, the 22nd and 29th from 5:30 to 8. So if you would be interested in getting a notice of the workshops, we can have a sign-up sheet, and we will notify you with all the particulars, and you can spread the word. Amy?
I just wanted to underscore what both of you just shared, as part of the gift is to the people left behind. It's not just about you and your wishes. It is, very much so. But it's much more also included about knowing the people that you left behind felt good about your death. I think I just wanted to underscore that.
It turns out
it's a gift to your family.
Right.
And one of the reasons we decided tonight would be a good night to do this is that Thanksgiving is coming up. It's when families gather, and so that makes it good. But it also gives you an opportunity to take a little time when you're together to realize, you know what? We're not always going to be here together. People will be passing on. And that can only make us more thankful for our being together. And so that becomes a very intimate experience rather than just the watching the football games and some of the discussion that might be going around the table. So that's one of the reasons we chose tonight to start talking about this and how to talk to families. So what we would like to start with, divided into two, is one of the first exercises that we have is called personal reflection. And so what we would like you to do, and we have pencils if you need them, is to take your pencil and just spend a little time yourself going through, and it tells you how to mark. I'll just pass those around. Mark these. It just says check all the answers that apply. And what we're going to be asking you in a few minutes is what were the most difficult questions, and why that might be.
And so I'd like to emphasize that this is not going to be a discussion document, where we're going to share with each other our answers. This is a personal reflection on your part. You check all the boxes that apply with any given question. But again, just what is the most difficult, ones, and we'll talk about that. So we'll take a few minutes now. You said number 7?
7.
Oh, I didn't even see those.
Okay, if
I
you
was
were-
wondering why I was done.
So if you were told that you had a limited time to live, how would you want to spend your time until you died?
It depends on how long the time is and how your physical condition is.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I'm telling you, you have a limited amount of time to live. How do you want to spend it? I'm telling you right now.
We all have that situation.
Goes with the territory.
So that's an important question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else?
I found 10 the most difficult.
10. What's the one thing you would want to say to someone special before you die? Anybody have ideas on that?
Well, I'm thinking beyond the obvious, I love you, thank you, but it's something.
Yeah, it's the Ira-Biox, it's I love you, thank you, forgive me, I forgive you.
Yes.
And then goodbye when that time comes. And again, that's something that we can keep up to date on right now.
You don't need to wait.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't need to wait for
You
those
said it,
things.
you don't need to say it.
I'm curious why you engineered this document to have a question like number 9, because it seems
So
an
what does
odd,
that reveal?
It seems an odd question.
Okay. I'm going to tell you that we did not design that question. Most of what we have, and I think this is a good point, we have gathered from different sources.
Okay.
So that's one of the things. But, so how does that seem odd to you again?
It just seems odd for a death planning document to ask how I would want to go if I had a choice. I don't know.
But it does
I don't know why it
reveal.
seems odd, but it just seems really odd.
Okay.
But it's
just-
revealing too.
Revealing
It's
what?
revealing.
Well, for me, both my brother and father died when I was 20, and it was a sudden, unexpected death. And I actually, as I look back on it, I prefer that rather than seeing someone suffer for a long amount of time. So it orients me, the question orients me to what I'm familiar with,
Oh, okay.
and what I see as perhaps better, if I'm when I'm the one dying. But I found it, sort of startling to read that. Also, the number 8, who do you want to go first? You or your spouse? I found that sort of in the same category as 9. But I think it's thought-provoking and just sort of is revealing where you're coming from.
Yeah, it really raises the question too that I was trying to batter on earlier. Is it better for your loved ones if you die a quick, unexpected
Right.
death, or if they have a week or a month's lead time.
Yes.
2 years is probably too much, but.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That's exactly an insight that I got in one of the workshops. I always thought that I wanted to, die in the middle of the night with a cardiac arrest.
Yeah.
And one of the participants in the workshop was describing what she said was a beautiful death, and it was her husband. And he had something wrong, wasn't diagnosed, finally was diagnosed, and he was given 2 to 4 weeks to live. And they had the opportunity to gather the entire extended family, and they were able to say their goodbyes. And she said it was beautiful. It was like, wow, I had never thought of that. So it made me begin to reflect more deeply. What is it that I want, and then how is it that I want to live now? And it was quite a milestone for me.
Yeah, I lost both my parents in 1 hour events, and it's really tough. You don't even know they're gone for months.
Yeah.
And I think the question gets us in touch with all the variety of ways
Yeah.
that people die, and that they can be very different. And this is just it's an emotional way of getting us involved in the questions around dying. And this is our opening.
Mhm.
And so, yeah,
Thank
it
you guys.
does.
That clarifies the value of the question greatly to me. So
Yeah.
thank you for your answer.
Yes, thank you.
But how about 8?
I don't have a spouse or a
I don't
partner.
Okay.
wanna- yeah.
That was interesting.
Change it to children, and it really changes the
Yeah.
discussion.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah. Very true.
So in the workshop, we use this, and we make it very clear that if a person at the table really doesn't want to speak and share, that's perfectly okay. And we also have a ground rule not to hog the time, to allow opportunity for others to speak if they wish to. So there's nothing mandatory about what goes on at the individual tables, and that's why we have facilitators at the tables to allow a free flow of communication where desired.
How many people do you usually have at one of these?
15 to 25, and a table will typically be 4 to 5.
Are you doing this in Missoula or Montana? Or?
We're doing this in Missoula. And the first public one, Hospice of Missoula is sponsoring in January, the 22nd and 29th.
Where is the next out?
So, do you know where Granite Pharmacy is?
Yeah.
Granite Pharmacy?
It's across South Avenue from Village Healthcare, from where the nursing home is on South Avenue, just past the fire station, and they have a large area there for us to gather. We also threw around the idea of hosting at the funeral home, because Garden City's been so kind and wanted to collaborate on these things. But I think for now we're looking at the Hestia space because it is so neutral and maybe doesn't seem as scary going into the funeral home to talk about end of life.
That'd be tough.
Could add a whole level of anxiety that we don't want to bring to the table, right?
And we want to be inclusive.
We do, we
Pretty
really want to
weird.
be inclusive. So that will be open if you guys would like to sign up for that today, you're welcome to. If you want to just email and let me know that you're interested in coming. It's fun, I think it's fun.
Yeah.
It
there's-
really is, you leave with a different,
And there's often a lot more laughter than there are tears.
there really is.
It's amazing. Yeah. Okay. So another tool that we use are called Go Wish cards. And so we're going to pass you each a deck of cards.
Are they color-coded?
And what we would like you to do is take the cards and find a partner and you might change partners and so on. But what you are to do is to take these cards, and I suggest that you find a place at the bar, some place where you can kind of spread them out a bit, but also be with someone else. You're going to divide the cards into very important, somewhat important, and not important.
So 3 piles.
3 piles.
And you're doing this individually. Each of you is
And
taking the deck and just taking, there's like 36 cards. And one of the cards is fill in the blank, if there's something.
Oh, a wild card. There's a wild card in there to make up
Um,
something else.
And that you, 3 piles again. Really important.
Very
Most
important.
important.
Somewhat important.
Somewhat important, not important at all.
And that, what we would like you to do with your partner is engage in a conversation. Tell me more about this. How would this change?
In terms of the most important.
Right. Yeah, you ought to take the very important and prioritize them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But then engage each other in conversations about your cards. How might this change over the years? What would be important for your proxy or advocate to know about this, and how would that be? So what you are practicing, you're just using this to find a way of engaging in conversation. And what we're going to do after a bit is we're going to come back, and you can bring your cards back, and we'll just talk about your experience. You know, what were some really helpful ones? And I'm going to tell you, we don't have all the answers to those questions. We're not
have
going
any
to tell
answers.
you. But it's very few. But we are gathering them from the people that we work with. And so we would appreciate very much your experience with these cards. So you can go up at the bar. There's
Do it right
a
in front of you,
table.
wherever.
Yeah, there's a table back there. So take your cards and get 2 or 3 people. Sure. Yeah. There are cards and our brochures are up there. We also have that little blue sheet that we put together that talks about, on one side, what you should talk about, and on the other side, about proxies and what that job is, and who you're going to be looking for in order to do that. And I always say it's not an honorary position. Very often we say our oldest child is supposed to be our proxy, but they might not be the right person. Our spouses may not be the right person. So we really need to take that very seriously.
The American Bar Association has an app that you can download from the App Store that's free. That is a place for you to put all your medical proxy type documents, including a will if you want that on there, and medical power of attorney, and regular durable power of attorney. And it's all on a secure site, and it's all in this one app, so that no matter where you are, you'll have your phone with you. You can have access to all the documents. So if you rush to a hospital or to some kind of site, it's all in one place on your phone.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, the
Yeah.
American Bar Association has some wonderful resources
So great on your
in
phone.
terms of the final chapter of life, and we borrow from them extensively. So with regard to this exercise,
I just want to say.
yeah, go ahead.
And then I discovered an app for keeping your prescription drugs on your phone. And I haven't done this yet, but it has an override where you can, all your emergency contacts can then stay on your locked screen, so that if there's an emergency and you're brought to the hospital, when the hospital looks at your screen and it's locked, it has all your emergency contacts.
Wow, that's.
Almost all smartphones will do that.
They do that now? I haven't seen that. Okay, but anyhow, I
But,
just
yeah,
wanted
right,
it's
no,
great.
thanks for
I'm
sharing.
gonna look for that, because I haven't seen that yet.
Thank you.
So with the Go Wish cards, how did that go?
It was fun.
What surprised you? Anything? When you were doing them for yourself? Did anything?
The directions of conversation. I mean, that, I guess it surprised me because we ended up getting into a lot of anecdotes. We got just partway through our important pile. And then started triggering just really good experiences of conversation. So out of that, I could see as a tool, if I was to be talking to Toby in a formal setting about advocacy or proxy or whatever, I would really get to see her value system and what she holds dear through more of the stories that were just sparked by the cards, as opposed to just, oh, that's the card you have, that's interesting. So
That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's powerful. And that's hopefully what the cards can do as you use them. Another technique is, let's say that you are the proxy, like Kathy and I are each other's advocate. And so I asked her to do my pile by herself.
For you.
Yeah, right.
And I did my pile and we compared. It was like, what? How much in tune am I with who you are, what you value, what your priorities are? And gosh, we have some work to do. So I understand more clearly, what's really important to you. And so that's another way to use these cards. So we have found them to be extremely useful. One of our workshops, we only gave the participants 15, 20 minutes, and we get feedback from each workshop. And a majority of the folks in the workshop, you didn't give us enough time with the cards. We wish we had had more time, because it really helped me to come into contact with what's important, and then the storytelling. You need to allow time for storytelling, because that's what really defines who I am. It's not a statement, it's a story.
So now we send them home from between weeks, send them home with them, and so that they can spend more time
That'd be
with them.
fun, yeah.
And one of the things is they change, and I remember Mindi telling the story about the fellow who did this, and he had one priority.
He was 91.
He was 91.
He was 91, and I sat and stressed, and ooh, maybe. And I looked around the table, and for those of us that were my age to maybe Brian and Kathy's age, we had kind of like even piles. And then there was him, and his entire doesn't matter pile was like the whole deck. And then there was just one, and for the life of me, I can't even remember what the one was. I think it was pain. I think it's to be comfortable at all costs. Not to be in pain. And the rest of it wasn't even. And so when I asked him, he's just like, well, that will be everybody else's experience, except this pain thing is the only thing that I will feel. And I just need them to know that that is the number one thing. And it was just really profound for me that we had put all this thought in, well, if or not or but. And for him, it was just so simple. He was just like, I'm there and this is it. It was a really profound love to me. He was a good teacher that day.
Yeah, that's the thing. That when we get into these conversations, we just teach each other, and sensitize ourselves.
It'd be
So
a
that's-
fascinating sociology study by ages. I mean, I think you're right. By 91, that's all I'm going to care about.
Right.
I know that right now.
Yeah.
Which is another reason why it has to be an ongoing conversation.
Ongoing process.
Yeah.
It may not be just when you're 91, but
It's
the
close
last
now.
day, the final day of your life, it may come down to one card, not just be a function of age.
Yeah, if everything else has been good.
Because that's why I sort of laugh as I'm doing this, and that I think like we're just projecting as to like what we think we might want.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which probably bears no resemblance to what we'll really want when the time comes.
I say that I wish I could just experience my death once, so I could quit thinking about it quite so much. But I plan it, and I say all the time, I have thought it and planned it so many times. I am 98% sure I'm going to be one of the 6% traumatic deaths, because it's not going to go as I planned. It's it just, but I live my life so differently because I think of it all the time. And I think that that's the gift of leaving here. And when I hear people stressing about things, I'll have flashbacks to these moments of, I don't know that I think that matters to me anymore. I don't judge them, but I can just honestly say, like, I remember when that was like a really big deal breaker to me, and now I just have I look at joy in different places, so it just seems like such an authentic way to check in with yourself.
Well, and for me, it's thinking of myself being in that room where I'm dying with all of these people, and I don't know what they think the experience is about. They, everybody's in terror rather than we knew this would happen, we didn't know how, we didn't know when, but we accept, we know that death is gonna happen, we accept that, rather than, just being in total fear and confusion.
It's a beautiful transformation that happens though from when we first get together and we're strangers. At least for me, I'm usually strangers in the groups, even though the church groups know each other. There's still like a hesitancy to talk about these things because it is private but by the end of sharing those stories, and like you leave there really connecting to someone, and there's something about connecting with someone that makes it more comfortable to look at it in yourself. So I kind of equate it to going to church camp for the week, and you leave there and you feel like you've made friends for life because you've seen this intimate little window inside of them, and I think those are your lessons and your teachers so often.
Other reactions to the cards, that exercise?
What was helpful? What was helpful in your experience? What were some good questions that you asked each other? Or how did you go about engaging?
Well, I'm curious if someone came up with a wild card.
That's a great question.
Something that wasn't in the cards that was important.
I put the wild card back in the box because I didn't think we were playing the game appropriately. We got no use for this. Like I said, I don't freeform very well, Mindi.
But I'll bet when you send them home with people that many people come up with something.
I think so. We unfortunately don't get back to that. We're just trying to, we're offering a tool.
Yeah.
But it would be
But that's a great
good to be able to
suggestion.
do, it would be good to be able to do what we're doing here right
Because
now.
I bet there are things that,
Yeah.
for some people, last ride on the motorcycle.
For mine, I'll share mine. It was for it not to be a dramatic production.
Yeah.
That's so important for me
Yeah.
because so many of our family events become the big dramatic production, and my healthier self has found myself pulling away from that and centering and doing that. So for me, while I'm present, I don't want it to be distracting for me to not. I don't want to be sucked back into that.
Yeah,
That's
good.
my safe space that I've been working on creating, and I don't. Once I'm gone, they can have the funeral or the party of the century. I don't really. That's up to them for what they need, but I dread laying in the bed going, this cannot be my last experience still dealing with this. And my deathophobe husband hates it when I bring it up, but when we see something on TV, when Brittany Maynard was on all the time, it was like, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. He's like, can we just not talk about it anymore? And my kids are like, oh, you're going to a funeral this weekend? Are we gonna go? Should we go? And they're 6 and 4, and they're so comfortable with it, and I hope that's a good, like I'm telling myself, I'm living authentic, this is what I want them to know, but I really hope they're not sitting here and they're older saying, well, my mom did all these things. I'm doing it out of a place of hopefully love and overcoming their fears before they even have them, but you don't know until you get there. I mean, you just don't know. Make your best effort. I'm trying for myself.
And I think you have to get well into adulthood before you can really even think about what the words mean. I mean, a 6-year-old, a 20-year-old doesn't.
Yeah, I've met some really unterminal 20-year-olds lately. Right?
More and more so.
Yeah, I can't believe how many people are so far away from it. That's where I mean, it's just where they are.
These would be really helpful with young patients. When you had, like I'm thinking the cancer camp. I volunteered up there one time. Yeah, well, I wasn't in Tamarack, but yeah, I mean, when the kids get together, they need ways to talk, and they tend to not do it very well.
Okay.
That's great.
Good suggestions.
You know, it makes me wonder if there's like a life card. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the opposite of deaf. And I've struggled with this because we host Deaf Cafe, and we love Cafe Dolce. The acoustics aren't ideal there, but they're welcoming and it's a good environment. So I had called around to some other places to ask if we could have them there, and the reactions just shocked me. Like, absolutely not. We will never want our business associated with something that's called Deaf Cafe. We're trying to launch and grow in the community. If we're known as the Deaf Cafe, no one will come here. And then in the next breath, she said, but I really believe in this project.
Yeah.
I think it's so important. And I'm just like, I can't work with that. Right? I have no words for that because you get it and you don't.
Yeah.
But I feel like so many of us are there. Like, we get it, but we don't. I just told, I think, Trish, like, I can talk this talk, but when it was my grandparent in the bed, when it was my person, it was the greatest internal struggle in my life because I thought it and talked it, and it was so gut-wrenchingly hard. I was just grateful to have people around me that didn't say, but you said you were going to do this, you said you were going to do that. They just could be there for me. And so that's what I think the gift that volunteers or people who are comfortable and say, you don't have to judge, you don't have to.
So have you done this workshop with people who are terminally ill?
Well,
Because I'm thinking if we were terminally ill and we were in this room discussing
different
this, it would be so different.
At the Springs, there were the interest in the POST, which is a physician's order for life-sustaining treatment, which is your DNR. They wanted to know where to get their or several of them wanted to know where to get their bracelets, because that was very important to them. Because they knew that they could be out hiking or something and stop breathing, their heart stopped, and they did not want to be taken to the hospital. So that is what we have experienced. And a 104-year-old, that's what she wanted, and she was a very healthy, very with it woman, but she was clear.
Thank you. So bringing me back to what I was saying, she wouldn't take Deaf Cafe, but she said, if you could just change the name to Life Cafe, I'd be happy to have it there. And I was like, yeah, but no one would come because it doesn't have that. But I would think the same things for kids. Or like, I would like a deck that say Life Cafe. Like, what are your values in life, and what do you think? And we're trying to make like our family value list. What does it mean? What do we prioritize? And so like a deck part of life values.
What I think is that most of us think, well, yes, I want to talk about it, but no one else will. That's the way we see it. In fact, the first one we did, I went to the person in charge and said we wanted to do that, and he said, oh, but don't worry if nobody comes. Don't feel bad if nobody comes. And we had a 6-week thing, we tell you later. By the 3rd week, we had 30 people. I mean, people kept hearing about it, and they themselves want to come. But it is imagining that other people also want to talk about it is hard.
A couple things. Initially, when we started the workshops, it was about advanced care planning, meaning the advanced directive. And we have evolved to the most important thing is the conversation. However, the advanced directive has value. And for me personally, Kathy has identified what music she wants played. I wouldn't be able to keep that in my head. So it's recorded and documented so that I know what she wants happening as she is in her final chapter. And that's very valuable to me. That's essential. So the advanced directive process is also stimulating in terms of questions. We happen to like the 5 wishes document, which is at St. Patrick's, and St. Patrick's has at the library the resources, including the document, and they will then register that document with the Montana Registry, which is, Montana's ahead of a lot of other states of having a registry for advanced directives. So advanced directives do have value.
But you also have to tell your family where the thing is, because you get hauled into a number of the local hospitals, they've never even heard of them.
Well, that's what I was saying.
Right.
Yeah.
But to have it on your phone, these phones have changed
Yeah.
medicine.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, the-
Yeah, no, that's great.
And again, the other thing is that as far as an advanced directive channeling and lassoing what's going to happen with the healthcare options that are offered, our experience with that and talking with healthcare professionals, not so much. It's going to be the folks in the room, including the proxy, the advocate, the person who has the medical power of attorney. But that person is not going to dominate. The healthcare provider is going to ask for consensus. And if consensus isn't there, that provider is going to say, listen, you need to make a decision on whether to intubate or not. We don't have a lot of time. You guys need to come to a decision. If you need help, we've got social workers available. If that's not sufficient, we've got an ethics committee. But they're looking for consensus, regardless of what the advanced directive says. So it's really important. That's why we have shifted gears, and I think across the nation that's what's happening. That the conversation, and as Amy pointed out earlier tonight, the continuing conversation, because it's a process. I'm going to be different 5 years from now in terms of my priorities than I am today. If I were 30 years old, it would be way different. So it's a process. One of the things I'm taking from you tonight, the cards, gifts for our kids. You know, we've got a 42-year-old and a 40-year-old.
Yeah.
And to have them have those cards and then ask them to share what their priorities are, I think is really important. But that was stimulated tonight. So.
I've seen parents lose kids lately, a lot, and I had not ever thought of what a gift that would be as parents too, to be able to know what they are. One of the other important things I think for families to consider is if you look at advanced directives, they use language called if I have a terminal condition, and there's no chance at quality of life. So the words define terminal condition and define quality of life for all of us, oh my gosh, complete array of what that looks like. And doctors don't want to commit to what a terminal condition means because that's so heavy, that's so their judgment on what that is. So to define that within your family, quality of life means for me, Kit that owns us says, if I can't put a spoon through the food and put it into my mouth, my quality of life is done. Like she's just been able to, from what she's experienced, say, if I can't actually feed myself when presented food, that means my quality of life is no longer that I want to live. Like, what an easy thing for a family to be able to say is done. Whereas someone else would say, if I can't live in my home, meaning I don't have the resources to do it anymore, or I can't, then that's my quality of life that's no longer acceptable. Some people would say, if I can live on a ventilator forever because then I get to see my kids that much longer and meet another grandkid, that's okay. And I love that we get to define what that means, but the second we can't tell our family what that looks like, we're at their mercy. So,
and we're kind of at the mercy of that son who doesn't want to stop anything. So the whole group is at the mercy of that person who's not willing to face what's going on and what's needed.
I remember hearing a few years ago that it was often problematic being end of life at St. Patrick's Hospital because the Catholic value system often does not recognize some of these advanced directives because the church sort of forbids the ending of life.
I've had the reverse problem at St. Pat's. They take the things so literally that you can't, I had a patient who needed to die, and they would not allow him to. I mean,
That's what I'm saying, who needed to die and they would not allow him to.
But it wasn't because of they wanted to do all kinds of things that clearly were not in his best interest. Not because they were Catholic, but because they were following the piece of paper. He had said, I want everything done.
Oh,
And we all kept saying, no, wait a minute, we really don't want to operate on this guy. He's obviously dying before your eyes. No, he signed this piece of paper. And it was one of the most frustrating experiences of my life. But it wasn't because it was a Catholic hospital.
so you don't, this is probably not true what I've heard. I'm just
I can't
curious.
imagine they would pull the Catholic card. They might have, depending on who the personalities you have involved, but I don't think it'd be the Catholic piece.
The things from working at St. Pat's, and I don't speak on behalf of them at all, but what I can say I have seen that there are certain procedures that aren't allowed at St. Pat's.
Right.
And if you're ever faced with that decision, they give you options for where to transfer and how to assist you to get there. Well, like abortions, not ever perform at St. Pat's.
In terms of end of life.
In terms of end of life, I have not ever in all my time seen someone that wanted something specific to end of life that had an appropriate proxy that didn't challenge the ethics or put the hospital at a liability risk, not because of them being Catholic, but because of them not having two different people saying, I'm in charge and I want this and I want that. And in those situations, they would turn to the ethics committee, which every ethics committee I've sat in on, I have never heard the stance of the hospital as a religious organization says this or this. It always comes back to the legal rights of the patient and really the legal protection of the people involved giving that care.
And the ethics committee is wonderful.
They are fantastic, and I think that again, it just speaks to whoever's around your bed is who's going to be fighting that battle one way or another. I think we haven't talked about videos and what an amazing gift videos are for a person of sound mind to make a video of themselves saying, now I have this situation and I want to live as long as I can do this, but if I can't, this is what I want, and when it's a video and it's a person it's that same person you've always known, and you can pull it up and it's like, how do you argue with that? Like there's very few,
That's great.
There's very few, and I started to talk to that about some hospice patients who say, I have family that I don't know if they're gonna get this, and it's like, what if we had something they could tangibly go to that reassures them that following their wishes was a gift you gave to them.
I love what you just said, Mindi, too, is like, you can't argue with that. Well, you can't, because they're on the video screen. Which is so much different than when you're in person. You can't be like, but wait, because they're just going to keep talking. Then you have to rewind to get back to that point.
Go ahead, try to get over it. It's not going to happen.
And that's brilliant, because it is a different approach to communicating with people that are in an emotional spiral.
And
that
whether
can't communicate
exactly, and whether you agree with Brittany Maynard or not, as you're watching her videos, there's no questions on how she felt. And I appreciate the people who argue against it and why it's not. When you watch their videos, there's no question. You don't question those things. These are well thought out wishes of people who are very specific on what they want. And I wouldn't want to ever be a lawyer arguing against someone of sound mind able to do that. And I've seen doctors do mini mental health exams, and as I'm watching them, I'm like, gosh, I really wish I could video this, because if a family ever wanted to challenge it, if you were me sitting here as opposed to looking at my charting documentation, I'd sure rather be able to pull out the video to say, see, look at this. I can't convince you any more than you watching them clearly be of sound mind and making, whether you think it's a bad choice or not, it's still their choice. And I agree, there are stupid choices in the world. There are a lot of laws or an absence of laws that say people can make stupid choices all the time. That's their right. And that's what's so hard as loved ones, to look at someone and doing that. So I think the power of video is pretty incredible.
The problem I have is when somebody like Kim says the quality of life is being able to feed herself. That might be a number of years. prior to her death. People live a long time, and that's of course where all of the right to die, compassionate choice kinds of issues are revolving around. I'm kind of with her. I mean, if I can't go climb a mountain, I just leave, I think. But I might not feel that way when I get there. You know?
Right.
It's,
That's right. That's right, it changes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the pulse, I've worked with the committee for the state who's looked at that
Uh-huh.
because these questions come up so much about feeding tubes, and we actually we took nutrition, we left nutrition on, but we took antibiotics and blood products off of the pulse because those situations for when you would want blood products or not blood products, or when you would want nutrition or not, they're so variable with whether you're dying of a throat cancer or whether you just had a stroke and you need nutrition to sustain to get through the stroke. And there's so much research to show what happens. The tincture of time is a medicine that we don't talk about very much. And I wish we could do more research specific to what time looks like. But then again, maybe it's not definitive enough to give family answers. But there's just a lot of power in having these conversations before. I keep going back to that. So important to talk about.
So it's so funny though, you know, we make this big thing about talking to your primary care doctor. Medicare is actually going to start paying you to talk to or paying the doctor to talk to you about your end of life wishes. And as you say, I mean, there's no reason to do that anymore. It's really craziness.
Well, and the thing about, I think doctors in the olden days that were at the bedside, that families
Huge.
have a crisis and they call, and there's still, I could name 10 doctors that patients say, I have my doctor's cell phone if I need him.
Mhm.
And I love that.
Yeah.
But the reality is most of us don't have doctors that could do that. And if we do call after hours, we get the on-call doctor. And if we go to the hospital, we get the hospitalist. There's really great advantages to all those things. But telling your doctor only gets into that medical record.
And even if you tell your doctor, he probably doesn't have hospital privileges anymore, and he might come by and see you, but you know,
But it's different.
Yeah, it's a different world. It's so sad.
But I would say that in terms of the personal physician counseling, there is value because with my particular personal physician last year, he said, Brian, you need to start thinking about when you don't want to have tests.
Right.
Because if you have a test for XYZ,
Right.
you're going to probably feel compelled to do something. And it may not be the
And
right
why not
thing.
do
And
the
you're going
test
to
if
worry
you're
about
not
it.
going to do something.
Exactly. And he said, so
Yeah.
we
That's
need to
huge.
talk about,
Yeah.
you know, do we
Yeah.
do X test? Do we do Y test? Do we do that test? Because then you're going to be in a real fix, a real dilemma.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't do the test, you know,
You plan for
you're
that
not
too.
going to, you're not going to have to deal with that.
Yeah. No,
And
absolutely.
so I value that. I value that conversation.
That's a different conversation though,
Yeah.
than what do you want me to do? How do you want me to work? Yeah.
But I think he's prepping me though.
Oh.
I mean, he's saying,
Yeah.
you're getting along.
Yeah, yeah.
And this idea that we should continue to test, I don't believe in that.
No.
And I want to share that with you.
Yeah.
And here's the reasons why. And I just felt that was powerful.
And my
Yeah.
father was in a nursing home and they kept doing these blood tests
Yeah.
for his kidney function. They were failing. So what were they gonna do?
Right.
They're just gonna keep testing. I mean,
And it is helpful if you have a physician that you really know, which most of us don't anymore, but if you really have one, then the end of life discussion can be useful just in terms of helping you
Exactly.
come to terms with, you know, what you want to do and how to talk to your kids and stuff, but it's not, he's not going to be, you're
No,
not
he's not
talking
gonna be
to
present.
him because he's going to be involved.
No,
That's it.
exactly.
I guess this is a little off topic. I mean, this whole thing seems like a bold and somewhat audacious movement to change a whole culture,
Yeah.
which is admirable and wonderful. It's great, and it starts here, and cultural change
Sure.
always starts small. But I mean, I'm curious how you, or if you, objectively measure your success or failure of your volunteer venture, and how you do it.
we give feedback forms, checklists.
Okay.
and that really doesn't tell us anything.
Awesome. I think my answer would be, we really believe in giving back to the community. Yeah. We believe that this is an extraordinarily important topic to take death and dying away from doctors. It's the movement that women did to take birth back to them and away from the doctors. And I feel that that's an analogous process. Are we going to reach critical mass? We can only make a small difference in a nice community and try to do the very best we can do, but we'd have no objective measurement. Okay, that's.
You know what, I feel though that you're not just taking it away from the doctors, but I also think the level of specificity that some people get into in doing this planning takes it away from their loved ones and not give the loved ones an opportunity to show their respect and to have a memorial that may be the music of the family's choosing and not the deceased's choosing. Maybe the family should be making those decisions because the music is important to them and their memory and not the deceased. So I think, I have seen, specifications where people pick out the exact coffin they want, or, every single detail, the headstone, what it looks. Well, what about the people who want to make those decisions for that person? Aren't they deserving of some of
Are they
this
the ones
decision
grieving
making?
and so on?
Isn't that the opportunity of the conversation?
Yeah.
Isn't that the opportunity of the family gathering and
Right,
talking
exactly.
about end of life and saying, hey, Mom, I know you like this music, but you're not going to be there.
Yes.
And
What do you mean?
what's important to us is that we have the opportunity to
But I feel that there's this smacks of, let me tell you what I want you to buy me for my birthday.
Mhm.
That there's a little too much ego in it.
again, if we can get folks, families, loved ones to talk, and share back and forth.
How about being surprised?
So-
And I remember actually she was one of our facilitators, decided that I think she has 5 sons, would not be appropriate, they would not be able to make the right decisions, and she was gonna have this.
So what is the
friend do
right
it.
decision?
Well, it's what she wanted. But when she went to them and said, this is what I'm gonna have, and they said, absolutely not. And she respected that. But she was trying to save them, because it just
There's so much
opens.
control. It's like
Well,
there comes a
no.
point where
No,
you have to
I
give
think-
up some control.
I think she understood that, and she
gave back.
and it came back to her. Oh, you really care that much? You really
Yeah, right.
want that? So it's that dialogue, it's that conversation, and so yes, there's
See,
a
I'm
way.
just getting the feeling there's too much conversation, if you want to know the truth, according to this plan. No, about this plan. I respect what you're doing, but I think there's room for spontaneity, responding within the situation and making the best choices, and accepting the fact that, I'm not talking about legal situations, that type of thing. I mean more the memorial and the honoring.
Well,
to
I
give
agree
room.
with you, but what they're talking about is different. It's gonna be different for every family. But if you can't openly discuss, you have no clue what's gonna happen near the end of life. And, if the family's gotta be clued in, I would agree about the memorial. My mother absolutely didn't want a funeral, and when she died, I said, okay, we're not gonna have a funeral. And her boss called me up and said, Liz, we're having a memorial service for your mother. Okay, go ahead. I'll be there, but I'm not gonna have anything to do with it, because you don't want one, but, but if, this is protecting you. If you show up in the ER at St. Pat's, and you don't have somebody that can come in and be your advocate.
Right.
It's just like when you're having a baby, you can't advocate for yourself. You gotta have somebody else that says, let's hold off on the section
I
for
wasn't
another hour.
talking about the advocacy, I was
Yeah.
talking more about the planning.
Oh,
Or,
yeah.
yes.
Well, I'm curious about this too, with your guys' experience of running these, because I am definitely, and I'm trying to shake this a little bit, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do everything. Do you get that with people that maybe have a frustration in these conversations where it's like, well, I just want you to tell me the right way to support my mom who's dying, or I just want you to tell me the right way to have a funeral, or the right way to pick music, or, do you
No,
see
and-
that
Yeah,
behavior? or-
when he was talking about my music, it's while I'm dying. You
Oh,
know,
well,
that's,
okay.
you know, that's what we're
Oh.
talking about.
Sure,
exactly.
Oh.
I'm just curious if you get that
So,
flavor in the
I'm not-
conversation
I'm not-
that you see.
Can you clarify your question?
I guess for when you facilitate these workshops
Okay.
that you guys do you get the sense that people are trying to grab onto more of an objective answer to a question than just what you're trying to do, which I feel is spark a conversation, and that the end will take on the amount of forms that are in the room here, right?
Yeah.
Like what I want is different than what you want, and what I want for my mom, who's going to eventually end up dying, is going to be different than what you want for your mom, or you want for your mom. But do you get the feeling where people are kind of like, how should I do this?
I think more what I get at the tables that I've facilitated is, wow, Charlie wants this at the table. That's not at all what I would want.
Okay.
You know, but I respect that that's what, and again, one of our ground rules is, it's not about trying to convince anyone of anything. That's not what we're trying to do in these workshops. It's about you getting in touch with what you believe and respecting the choices of others. So I think what I've experienced is these ahas, geez, what he just described or what she just described, that doesn't fit me at all. And I'm glad to know that. And
Or
rather
maybe
than
I-
looking for,
Yeah.
Okay.
One of my experiences was about a respirator, and I was saying, and we do this for ourselves too, I said, I just can't imagine a machine breathing for me. That would just, and the person across the table from me said, I've always been worried that I couldn't breathe, and I would really feel very happy or at peace with having that respirator.
Wow.
And so those are the sorts of things that happen in the conversations,
Wow.
which are ahas for each of us. And so it more supports differences.
Right, very cool.
And that's appreciated, because otherwise when we do have these situations, we project what we want on the person that's dying.
Yeah.
So we see
have-
that a lot though in hospice, when people finally do come. And one son from across the country comes and says, this is how we do this. And the other person that's been here says, oh, that's not what she's been saying. And then we do see that. And instead of arguing, we work backwards to see, where did you get the idea that that's how we do it? And then, it's just that awareness. We never judge. We never say what's right or not. But we just try to bring some awareness, and then families have a way of working that out, or they don't, and it's not, and I'm like, I wish you guys would have had this conversation. But I think that not ruling anything out, and I think being open to that possibility again of, looking at culture, because culture plays a huge, when you look at the Native Americans, what they do is, sometimes I feel like they're light years ahead of, the things that we could learn and do from, but until you backtrack, why do you think that is how he is? And maybe that is what brings the whole family peace, and then that is what works. It's so
Wait, what do they
different.
do that you're saying?
The Native Americans, some of the things we've talked just in class, just with symbols, or the way they allow other family members to come and actually take care, and after someone dies, the ritual process around the body, and then modern day people who might not want that done. Some people might just want to be cremated right away, and that's not in their tradition. And that question of, but that's not for you, that's for me, but then that question of where's the spirit during that passing, and how do you honor where the spirit is according to what the culture believes, because it is so different by cultures, and I'm convinced I don't have any idea what that looks like. I don't know, so I am hesitating to put anything too concrete on where I want to see, because sometimes I see people that I feel like aren't in their bodies, and sometimes I don't know. I just don't know, but I think if a family is convinced or someone has a strong reason for feeling a way, you have to explore that, because after someone's gone, it's final. There's no going back to explore that before it happened. it's final. And then you have grief issues that you work on those things. So if you take the opportunity to open this can of why do you think that way, and is there an opportunity to understand that better between us? Because then after you're gone, there's no opportunity to understand it anymore. It's done and you're left with what you're left with. And I think that's part of our job in hospice, is to say, could we work some of these things out ahead of time so it doesn't leave quite so many questions after you're done?
I think one of the most important things I hear from your description about what you do is just helping people understand some of the terminology.
Mhm.
It is so frustrating to have Aunt Susie, who's in New York, call and say, you've got to do everything there is to do. I mean, people think the medical profession are magic workers. And doing everything I can do is pretty unpleasant. You know, you don't want me to do that.
Right.
You know?
Right. And we
but-
talk about the fact that doctors are far more likely to have DNRs than the rest of the population.
Yeah.
And so we, we talk about, what that is like, to the extent that we can.
Yeah, in that workbook, we've got definitions of terms, where we picked that up from the Alzheimer's Association has a wonderful pamphlet on that. And we also say that not all healthcare providers are real good about talking about the pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
One healthcare provider is going to say, do you want Kathy intubated? And another healthcare provider will say, Kathy's not breathing real well, her oxygen blood level is down, we need to have, we have the option of intubating, and the problem with intubating is that she will not be able to communicate, and that she probably will try to pull it out, either consciously or unconsciously. And if we do that, then she has to go back for x-rays, because when we put back in, we have to make sure it didn't go in the stomach. And it can be very painful and irritating, and oh, by the way, when a person comes in to see Kathy, she's not going to be able to speak. So here are the pluses, here are the minuses.
And we may
Now,
never
the
get
advocate is the person that has to say, hey, healthcare provider, you told me that the oxygen level's low. What do we do about that? We can intubate. Well, what are some of the problems or issues?
What else can we do?
With that? And are there any other options? That's a good advocate. That's a good, medical power of attorney person present in the room exploring options. So.
Well, I would think your work just opens up the door for some people who've never talked about this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah,
You know?
it's great.
I mean, that's the big thing, and then getting other ideas other than what they just thought, That's the wonderful part for me, is that, and
Yeah,
like you say,
that's-
it's gonna change all the time.
That's kind of our measure. Maybe we've moved each person an inch,
Yeah.
and we don't know whether we did or not.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So I think we'll wrap up, and I want you to know, first of all, thank you, you too. I mean, really,
Yeah,
thank you.
That was really good.
I think we'll all have a lot to think about. And going forward, January, we will have a workshop that everyone and anyone would be welcome to come and attend. It'll be 2 parts, 3 hours apiece, right? 4 hours.
2.5.
2.5 hours apiece. And we'll do some of the pre-work one week, and then the next week we come back and finish up that discussion, and then it's just information, no expectations, no homework assignments that are make or break for you. Our next 2 conversations, and I'm not sure which will happen in December and January, but there has, what have we learned from Brittany Maynard? And Compassion and Choices has gone from something that people only knew that name when they came to conversations like this, and now it feels like everybody is talking about that, and I wonder how that's changed for them as an organization. And so I've asked Amy to come back and talk specifically about legislative action and what that looks like, because we are one of only 5 states that it is a possibility for. And how has that changed anything? So the other person that we've invited to come is Lily White, who's a forensic anthropologist who's presenting at the National Anthropology Conference. We met her at Death Cafe, and she's going to talk about, she studies people after traumatic grief and how that looks different from expected death.
Oh.
And by traumatic grief, her work specifically has been related to crime And it's different from what we know as hospice, but it's, I would maybe challenge, it might be more intense and touch a different group of people than we're used to working with. So that's what's on our agenda next.
You know, another one that would be really interesting would be, and I don't know, I'm not recommending anybody because I don't know who the right person would be, but a doctor who could really talk about what Baxter means to him or her, because it really isn't permission to help people die. It's very iffy.
Looking right at you.
It isn't me. I guess I could research it.
I feel
but
like you have a lot of time before then, but I do think that as a physician, I would love to hear the two sides of it, because I think sometimes we get a little critical of them. And then I think of what it would be like to go home. I'm so grateful to go home and be the person that's job was to just look at possibilities and options. And do physicians feel like that's their job too, is to just look at possibilities and options, or do they feel like they have the weight of the world, balancing all of these things and knowing the patient's culture and their intricacies, and they don't want to step on their toes by suggesting the wrong thing or the right? I'd love to hear that. And
when you lumped Montana with the other four,
yeah.
this isn't Oregon.
No, and
I can't do what I could do in Oregon.
And I've heard
practiced
people
both
say,
places.
specifically, we don't really have laws about this.
No, we don't.
It's kind of legal, kind of, like,
You
they
have a
said
little
it's
backup if you
legal.
get sued is
But
about
there's
it.
an awful
Yeah.
lot of civil
It's
suits.
not illegal.
It's that it's not illegal, so the civil suit is the
Yeah.
scary part of it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
our best practice right now is to look at what's working well in other states and hope that that works. Like, that's
I don't
someone's
know anybody
livelihood
in
on
Montana
that.
that's gonna give you a fatal prescription, no.
It's a big deal, so I'd love to hear a physician's perspective who's not 100% comfortable. I mean, there's just got to be a lot of things you lay in bed and think at night. With, is it really fair to put that much power in one person's lap? I don't know. But, so yeah, I'll look forward to seeing you guys the next few months. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Kathy and Brian.